Good morning. The time is 10:09, and I would like to call this public hearing to order. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anthony Vera, and I would like to extend to you a very cordial welcome. We appreciate your attendance here today. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11, Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. I would remind both members and officials to direct your questions and concerns through the chair. Also, if you could ensure that your cell phones are either on silent or turned off, I would be grateful. So, the purpose of this meeting is to commence the committee's first hearing with stakeholders pursuant to its examination into the Telecommunications Services of Trinidad and Tobago's management of the cybersecurity breach of data before, during, and after its occurrence. The Telecommunications Services of Trinidad and Tobago, TSTT, is the country's largest provider of communication solutions to both residential and commercial markets, along with fixed line and mobile communications, internet and broadband access, and business and home alarm monitoring services. TSTT deploys both wireless and fiber optic networks to deliver voice, data, and multimedia capabilities. On the 9th of October last year, the organization identified a significant cybersecurity breach resulting in substantial operational disruptions, including the deliberate leakage of thousands of public records on the dark web by a ransomware group, and long-term impacts on customer trust and brand reputation. Today, we will be examining TSTT's management of the cybersecurity breach of data before, during, and after its occurrence. Now, may I also just say that, as I see it, the goals of today's hearings are threefold. Obviously, and first, accountability. We are providing an opportunity to TSTT to account to stakeholders and to the public in a transparent and responsible fashion. And for the record, may I just say that TSTT has already provided the committee with a substantive written response upon which members are going to enlarge. The second thing I think as an important goal today is, this is a wake-up call. Given increased cyber attack attempts, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the Caribbean, I think this is a timely opportunity to alert citizens as to the dangers posed in data breaches and cyber attacks in both public and private sectors. As TSTT is a subject matter expert in its own right, we very much welcome any suggestions or recommendations you may have on how to prevent and to guard against such attacks. And the third goal for us is parliamentary oversight. Today's deliberations will assist us in formulating our report and recommendations to Parliament. And it doesn't have to be just in respect of the data breach. It may be in terms of data protection, cybercrime law, what have you. So, obviously, there's a lot that we will want to cover today. And with a view to assessing the circumstances surrounding the data breach, your response to the breach, and your commitment to preventing similar incidents in the future. And for the sake of good order, I propose to treat with the issue in 8 distinct segments. First, we want to ascertain the nature of the breach. How did it occur? And what specific data was compromised? Secondly, ascertaining the extent of the breach. How many were affected, and the scope of the leaked information, personal details, financial data, that sort of thing. Thirdly, security measures. What security measures were in place before the breach, and whether there were any previous vulnerabilities or warnings that might have been overlooked. Fourth, TSTT's response plan. What steps were taken immediately after discovery of the breach? And how quickly did the company verify affected clients and relevant stakeholders? Fifthly, data protection measures. What policies and protocols are in place to protect customer data, and whether employees are adequately trained on data security practices. Legal compliance. Did the company comply with data protection laws? Were there any lapses in following industry standards and best practice? And TSTT's communication strategy. How transparent and timely was the communication with affected clients and the public? What measures were taken to help affected individuals secure their compromised information? And last, preventative measures. And I guess members will have a lot of questions to ask in this aspect. What steps are being taken to prevent future breaches, and whether the company is employing additional security measures or reviewing its protocols? In the main, this hearing is going to be conducted in public, but let me assure you, where sensitive issues are involved, for example, relating to sensitive and proprietary information, and where it might be unwise to disclose protective measures or potential weaknesses in the company's systems, the meeting will be conducted in camera, okay? Or we could ask you to write questions. Let me just, having said that, ask the witnesses today to please introduce yourselves. I know we have people from TSTT, representatives from the Ministry of Public Utilities, from the Ministry of Finance, and from the Ministry of Digital Transformation. Over to you.
Sean Roach, TSTT's chairman.
Good morning, Kent Weston, Acting CEO of TSTT.
Morning everyone, Jared Cooper. I'm from TSTT, GM, Operations and Administration.
Hi, good morning everyone. Sandor Smith, Acting GM for Networks and Information Technology from TSTT.
Good morning, GM and everyone. Leon Wessels from the Ministry of Digital Transformation, Deputy National Chief Digital Officer, sorry.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kamal Georges from TSTT. I am the Senior Manager responsible for Corporate Environmental, Social, and Reputation Management.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tanya Muller. I am representing TSTT. I am the Senior Manager of IT Infrastructure.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Curtis Augustin. I work at the Ministry of Public Utilities as the Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator.
Good morning, Chairman, members, and colleagues. I am Nicolette Duke, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey Balfon, PS Acting, Ministry of Digital Transformation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sharon Mohammed, Director, Agro-Based Manufacturing Services Sector, the Investments Division, Ministry of Finance.
Thank you all very much. And before I ask my members to introduce themselves, may I just also indicate that we are assisted by our very capable and competent Secretary, Mr. Brian Caesar, Clerk of the House, Mr. Johnson Greenidge, Ms. Crystal Gittins, Senior Parliamentary Research Specialist, Mr. Chad Salandi, Parliamentary Research Specialist. And today we are blessed in having Mr. Gareth Ferguson and Mr. John Anselm John from the Parliament's IT department. May I ask members to introduce themselves, starting with Ms.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Laura Lizamalising, member.
Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. My name is Richie Sukai, member.
Good morning, Rudranad Indar Singh, member.
Good morning, Wade Mark, member.
Good morning, Adrian Leons, member.
Thank you. And before we invite you all to make opening remarks, may I just convey some bad news? I learned this morning that our dear friend, Mr. Fazal Karim, passed away. He was a former senator and was a member of this committee, a very valued member. I want to extend my personal condolences to the family and on behalf of this Joint Select Committee. But I would also like to invite Mr. Indar Singh, Member Indar Singh, to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to take the opportunity here this morning to extend our deepest condolences to the family of the late Mr. Fazal Karim, to his wife and Judy and his two daughters, and of course, he would have served this committee and he held the distinction of being a member of the elected House of Representatives and also a senator in the parliament of this country. A man who made an indelible contribution to Trinidad and Tobago's development, being an educator all of his life, a secondary school teacher, one who would have worked at the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus and served Trinidad and Tobago in the capacity as Minister of Tertiary Education and Skills Development under the government of Prime Minister Kamla Prasad Bisesa. We remember him for his service to country, and we pray that Almighty God will indeed grant him a place in the hereafter based on his Book of Deeds.
Thank you, Member Indar Singh. Okay, I will now invite officials present to make brief opening remarks, starting with Mr. Roach.
Before I begin, may I also send condolences to your former member, Mr. Fazal Karim. I too had a good relationship with him way back in 2012 when Kishon won the gold medal. I met with him to discuss some matters pertaining Kishon and UTT. Honorable Chairman, members of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, good morning and thank you for convening this important meeting. Good morning as well to the members of the public present here and who have tuned in to today's broadcast. Mr. Chairman, TSTT thanks this committee for the opportunity to provide clarity about the company's management of last October's cybersecurity attack. Please allow me to place on record a few important statements about TSTT to contextualize our discussions here today. TSTT is Trinidad and Tobago's largest and only indigenous communications solutions provider. From its inception, it has been in the business of connecting the people of Trinidad and Tobago. This is a mandate that the board, management, and staff of TSTT hold in high regard. Mr. Chairman, the world's increasing integration on technology in all aspects of life brings both business opportunities and risk. One of the risk factors on technology-based operations is the increased sophistication of and targeting by cyber criminals. TSTT has provided a comprehensive response to the committee on the cyber attack that occurred in October 2023. That incident, unfortunately, is a part of a broader concerning series of cyber attacks on institutions across Trinidad and Tobago, including attacks on state enterprises and private sector companies. Mr. Chairman, I want to say from the onset that we should have handled certain aspects of our response to last year's cyber attack differently. Mr. Chairman, honorable members, we apologize for not communicating clearly with a timely manner to our stakeholders, including our line minister and our customers. We are committed to ensuring that the learnings from this experience are not lost. In the wake of the attack in October 2023, TSTT took additional steps to fortify our cybersecurity measures. We have strengthened our internal systems, introduced additional protocols, and are committed to the highest safeguards of our customers' data against future incidents. Mr. Chairman, given the sensitivity nature of this topic and the potential risk associated with a public discussion of our cybersecurity measures, we wish to respectfully request that certain aspects of today's hearing be held in camera. Our concern is that the public discussions about our cybersecurity strategies could have inadvertently aided potential threat actors or compromise our ongoing activities and security that we now are presently putting together. The committee has TSTT's full cooperation and commitment to transparency in this examination. However, we are mindful of the need to balance this with the protection of sensitive information that could potentially have far-reaching impacts if publicly addressed. We stand ready to assist the committee in this examination and to provide further clarification as required. Mr. Chairman, we wish to thank you for your consideration of our request for the opportunity to address critical matters on the agenda. Mr. Chairman, honorable members, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And be assured that we will not do anything to compromise your sensitive information. You just signal when you need, and we will stick a pin, and we will deal with it later in camera or ask for written submissions. Thank you. May I invite Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Public Utilities, Ms. Nicolette Duke, to say a few words.
Good morning again, Chairman, members, colleagues all. And thank you for the invitation to this hearing. At the Ministry of Public Utilities, we are committed to contributing to the improvement of the quality of life of the citizenry through the provision of resilient public utilities infrastructure and systems. We look forward to today's discussion and any recommendations that will enable us to further our efforts, along with our key partners, to meet this very critical need of all of us as citizens. I thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sharon Mohammed, Director in the Ministry of Finance.
Good morning, everyone, once again. The Investments Division of the Ministry of Finance is responsible for executing the investment policy as prescribed by Cabinet. The mandate of the division includes oversight, monitoring, and when necessary, the rationalization of government's equity holdings in commercial enterprises. TSTT is one of those such enterprises. So I thank you once again for inviting to today's proceedings, and we look forward to today's discussions.
Thank you. And Mr. Corey Belfon, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Digital Transformation.
Good morning again, Chair, members. Just would like to put forward that the Ministry of Digital Transformation would have accepted the invitation. We're thankful to be here to provide the requisite support to our colleagues, both at TSTT and the Ministry of Public Utilities. Rest assured that we remain committed to the progress being made in terms of cybersecurity practice, hygienic cybersecurity practices, as well as training across the board, technical training across the board, both in the private and the public sector, via our collaborative efforts with our external partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open the floor for questions, just to remind everyone that you will address through me, and also after you finish speaking, to turn off your microphone. Yeah? Can someone, for the edification of the public, tell us a little bit about ransomware? You know, what is it, and what does it do?
Good morning again, everyone. So ransomware is really a malware that has come into your system, gotten in illegally, and what happens is generally is the threat actor, which is the person or machine getting onto your platforms, they would start to encrypt the data on your platforms, really blocking you out from getting access to it. And they would leave a note stating that this is a ransomware attack and requesting that you reach out to them to pay that ransom money to get back access to your data.
So what you're saying is that ransomware prevents or limits users from using their system?
Correct.
And where is the source of this ransomware? My understanding is it could come from organized crime, from on the web, social engineering, from an infected device, and even from a disgruntled employee.
That is very correct. It can be from any of those sources. Ransomware is now a very big industry. And, you know, if I was a disgruntled employee, for example, I can actually reach out to what we call ransomware as a service and be able to give my information, and then they can easily get access to platforms and hold the company to ransom.
And how can you prevent this malware from invading you or attacking you?
So there are several measures that we can put in place to help prevent it from happening. But at the end of the day, there is no 100% method. I mean, we can do as much as we can train our employees, we can harden our environments, our systems, lock down as much as possible, but there are always ways that people can get around some of these things. We really just have to try to do our best in terms of putting together our plan and shoring up our systems and educating our employees.
Thank you very much. May I invite Member Sukai to start the rounds of questioning?
Chair, thank you. And once more, thank you for this panel to have this discussion going forward. I want to put on record, even up to now, we have attacks taking place in terms of telecommunication companies all over the world. So it's not only unique to us here in Trinidad and Tobago. It is how we handle the situation and how we treat with it going forward. And you're absolutely right. It is very difficult to eliminate, especially in where technology is randomly changing its dynamic environment. However, with that, I would like to ask, because from your submission here, you stated that the breach actually came from one of your satellite operations, I believe, right? Using the GitLab platform. And I want to get a little bit of clearer understanding of that structure. And if it's possible, like to have an understanding of the different tiers of security you would have had in place for these. This is your old, I'm sure you've been looking to revamp accordingly, which is fine. And I don't know if that's able to, be aired in this meeting. However, just to get an understanding of where the structure and how exactly it occurred, knowing where the infection started. Because once we understand where it started and how it started to spread, then we could get a clearer idea. But just for the general public to have an understanding of how the infection started and the different levels of security it would have had to pass through to ultimately create the havoc it actually ended up reaping at the end. Chair.
Honorable member, I would like to ask Tanya to respond to that as well. But just to paraphrase here, the question is around what is the structure in place within this organization and its architecture to protect.
No, actually, I want to get an idea of the old structure.
The old structure,
right?
Okay.
Not necessary. I want to know what the old structure was that allowed for such an infection, I would like to say, to take place.
Okay, thank you very much, honorable member. And to chair as well, this is one of those items that we would like to treat within camera. Mrs. Muller is prepared to respond to this, but we would like you to consider this to be an in-camera response due to the depth and the sensitivity of the data that we would like to share.
Enough.
Would it be possible to just get without compromising ourselves, just a sense of, well, how did it occur and what specific data was compromised? I mean, if you want, we can deal with it in camera, but what information you can share, we'd be grateful to have too.
Okay, the preference would certainly be within camera because we would like to take you through the chronology of that. If Tanya would like to provide a high level of what standard framework looks like, I would ask her to do that at this time. Chair, if that's okay, honorable member.
So from our analysis, we would have seen that, yes, the GitLab information was accessed via one of our dealer channel networks. The protocol is that nobody can access TSTT's environment directly. We have secure methods by which our vendors, our dealers, even our staff, if they are outside of the office, have to use to get onto our platforms. As a matter of fact, a lot of those dealer channel partners don't have access to anything back-end. They only have front-end access via this very secure method. So those are some of the things we have in place. Besides that, we also have things like firewalls and other security within our environment that really protect us on the border from attacks like this. We also are very specific around passwords and how we protect that and what types of passwords we use, how we expire them very quickly, things like that. So we have a lot of very good policies around those things in an effort to have the environment secure. And this would have been before the attack. We would have had these things in place in terms of systems, policies, and security awareness has been key for us for several years now in terms of training up our staff and making sure that they know, because these attackers are very, very sophisticated. They would send you phishing emails and you'd really have to think twice, even if you're technical, not to click on it and say, oh, yeah, this is it, because the level of sophistication is very high. So we've been doing it from all angles in an effort to shore up our environment and keep us safe.
But I think it was more like to understand how the infection, because while I understand exactly, I mean, you might see an email from UPS, that may not even be, because you have to have that knowledge to click on the email to see what the address is or URL is that is going to. So I understand and I appreciate the level of encryption you may have at different stages. But could you give like a little understanding how that one point of infection was able to infiltrate the organization at such a depth to be able to lock down? And if it is sensitive, I understand that, right? But I'm looking on the point that if you can give, even if it is just a surface example, because one thing that the public is lacking right now is the confidence. And being transparent is one part of adding to your confidence once more. So that's the angle I'm looking at. If it is, and I hear your question, and Chair, if you would allow it, maybe if it is possible. If it is not, I understand too.
Honourable Member, I appreciate the position and your comment around transparency, and that is a pillar of our engagement today. I think it's critical. I would allow Tanya to go ahead and just share the surface element of it, as that has already been socialized. And then if you would like to get the more specific detail, I would ask for that to be in camera, if that's okay, Chairman and Honourable Member.
Yes. Please proceed.
Thank you.
So what would have happened, they would have, the threat actor would have been able to get access to one of our admin passwords, plus a password via the dealer channel. And that's how they would have been able to access our environment. Yeah. So that's really how it happened. And, you know, admin passwords are golden passwords. And that's actually one of the reasons that we would not have been able to capture it very quickly, because it would have been that type of access.
Thank you. Member endorsing.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to take you to page 4 and 5 of the response that is dated the 29th of December 2023. And if you can clarify for the benefit of this committee, because, for example, I read via media statement from the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago that on the 26th of December 2023, the board experienced an attack on its IT environment, and the attack was detected while in progress, and quick action disrupted it before the threat actor was able to complete its task. And when we look at page 5, the fact, and I'm reading the first paragraph at the top there, the last sentence, these factors and the above factors contributed to the delay in identifying the breach between the 3rd of October and the 9th of October 2023. All these factors that have been identified, is this the norm? And does this take so long in terms of the 3rd to the 9th to actually detect this and bring it under control?
Thank you, Honourable Member. I would like to respond to that in part by acknowledging your comment around the identification after incursion, so the space between the 6th and the 9th. I would also allow and ask that Tanya Muller also provide some more details on the industry standards related to that sort of lapse. It is observed that and known that threat actors plant themselves within networks, sit dormant or without any action for a period, and I'll allow Tanya to go into the details on that now, if that is okay with you, Honorable Member.
Honorable Member, yes, that is, as Mr. Weston is saying, entirely true. So reports, and you can see this on the internet, the last set of findings have shown that threat actors can stay on systems generally between 8 and 5 days before they're detected. The way they attach themselves within your environment normally is a fileless way, and they pass under the radar. So yes, within the timeline that we have is really within the reports that we would have seen across the industry and globally in terms of a threat being, or a threat actor being dormant on the system until they actually start to take action. And you can see this from Info Security Magazine, Sophos, Computers Weekly. They all have information. And I mean, it changes all the time. It's not static. It would have been much longer in years past, but it's actually reduced significantly to between 8 to 5 days.
And if I could ask, in the report, it has been indicated to all members that TSTT's international cybersecurity experts, Checkpoint Software Technologies, they have been utilized by TSTT for how long now?
Since 2022, we engaged them much more than we would have engaged them previously. I don't have the exact date, but certainly since 2022, we would have heightened our reliance on them in terms of using them as cybersecurity experts.
Okay, so, and in addition to that, since 2022, so they have an annual contract, or
correct?
What is the duration of,
yes,
and how it is formalized, or and so on?
Yes, it is an annual contract that we have with them that allows for monitoring of our environment, and they also have hours for forensic analysis, which we would have used within this attack for them to do the actual forensics on the environment, to tell us what happened.
TSTT has been very satisfied from a performance appraisal point of view.
Well, we have been satisfied, but you know, just like we were mentioning before, it's not a one-stop where we put you in place and that's it. We've actually employed someone else after the attack to also assist us with monitoring as well, because we too felt that we needed to have another eye look at this.
And how much has been paid to Checkpoint Software Technologies since this entity has been engaged by TSTT?
Oh, I don't have that readily available. We'd have to send that to you.
Honorable Member, we will have to provide that to you in writing, as we don't have that in front of us today.
Okay, I was just about to suggest that.
Thank you.
But Chairman, I'm a bit concerned that a company like TSTT will come before this committee and not be able to provide that information. I mean, TSTT's money is the taxpayers' monies of Trinidad and Tobago, and I think that they should have been better prepared, at least to come here with that information.
Thank you, Member, but we will get the information. I believe, Member.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Just a quick question. Seeing the length of time for the data breach and understanding from what you said in terms of they gaining access to admin password, how, at that time, how often were these passwords changed? Or is it something like randomly done? Is there a schedule for these passwords to be changed? Or was it that the password was like that for a long while?
Monthly. Our schedule is monthly.
So then that was a weak link. Okay, thanks.
Member Leons.
Thank you very much. Just a follow-up on Member Indara Singh's question. You said that you engaged Checkpoint in 2022. Was this as a result of the, you indicated you were a victim of cybersecurity incursion on March the 13th, 2022. Was this as a result of that?
Yes,
What was the nature of that attack?
it was a ransomware attack.
Also ransom.
Yes.
And you also indicated that you needed additional cybersecurity. Was this the CyberEye Limited?
Correct. We have employed CyberEye Limited to do their own monitoring and analysis.
So in terms of from March 20, 2022, what gaps did you identify for you to further engage the CyberEye? When was this identified, and how are those gaps now filled?
Honorable Member, that is one of those questions we would like to respond to in camera, if that is okay with yourself and Chairman. Thank you.
I know you provided that information in writing, but just for the public's edification, can you confirm how many were affected and the scope of the leaked information?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I will ask Tanya Muller again to respond to that as she details the size of this.
It was 6 gigs of data, as was reported by Falcon Feeds. We did confirm that as well. And it was data from our customer billing systems, where we would have seen things like name, address, and so forth. That was leaked. That is correct. GitLab is actually some coding that we had on our system that was also leaked.
Member endorsing, you have a question?
I'd like to, with the passage of time and the provision of information, to also be advised how much CyberEye Limited was been paid by TSTT and when they have been engaged and so on. And what would have prompted TSTT to engage 2 entities? Was there an overlap in terms of the work that was being pursued by both entities? And what was the cost of this ransomware attack? How much was paid to the group Ransom EXX?
Thank you, Honorable Member. I would like to respond to those 2 questions. The first one is in relation to the value of the engagement. So there are 3 questions really. The value of engagement. I will stand corrected, but the initial cost was $975,000, Trinidad and Tobago dollars. The reason that it's very standard for an organization to have third-party consultation during a breach, as the scope is not an in-management scope during that period. It's not standard rhythmic security reporting, but rather in-depth investigation and remedial works on the security network. I would also allow Mrs. Muller to finish that statement if there is anything else, but I would also like to respond to your final question within that line, Honorable Member, to state that there was no ransom paid to RansomX. On the advice of our consultants and in keeping with industry guidance, we do not negotiate with terrorists or companies that position themselves in this role, as it further exposes the business. So at that stage, it was about remediation and rebuilding that space.
So, and the $975,000 was, just for clarification, was paid to Checkpoint and CyberEye, or just
no, that was specifically CyberEye.
Cyber.
Yes.
And you don't have the figures for Checkpoint.
No, I don't have the figures for Checkpoint, but that is one that I will definitely provide to you through the chair in writing.
And you said no ransom was paid and so on. But what has been the financial cost or fallout as a result of this ransomware attack?
So it has impacted the business significantly to a point where putting a dollar value on it would be a challenge as we started in our conversation around the impact on our reputation, our impact on our customers, future business. During the period where there was inability to collect, we saw a slow in the intake of collections. While that was the case, it did not stall our capability overall as we were able to catch up on that after. Of course, the financial impact is one to be seen, and that is why we're here at day one in this position of transparency, having the discussion and rebuilding that trust that will rebuild the confidence that is required as well.
Thank you. We're going to, later in this segment, I want to speak a little bit more about ransomware and measures to mitigate against things like that nature. But I'm just wondering, as you talked about reputational damage, may we hear from the manager in charge of reputation management whether an assessment may have been done in terms of damage and what has been done to cure that or to deal with it?
Sure, Chairman, and I'll call on Mr. Kamal Georges to respond to that. Thank you.
Chair, thank you for your question. The analysis in terms of the impact to the brand's reputation was done throughout the incursion. And what we saw in terms of customer feedback and customer reaction to the brand during that time is that during the week of the October 30th to November 2nd, thereabout, we saw there was significant or increased negative sentiment towards the brand in terms of what people were saying on traditional and social media. At the issuance of the final statement, or the statement on November 2nd, when the company provided additional details based on the information it had gathered, what we saw happened in the week thereafter is that negative sentiment declined by about 30% thereabout. And so in some ways, what that told us is it addressed parts of the concerns that customers had. Not all, but it was good to see that sentiment decline. In terms of coverage of this matter as well, we saw there was significant coverage. Across traditional media, there were close to 100 reported stories on this across multiple platforms, and that also has an influence on the way that customers would react to the brand. So there was that analysis. In terms of what people were saying during that time, they were more concerned about the attack itself and the data that was out there, and to know that it was not potentially damaging information that was out in the public domain.
Can you say who conducted the survey?
We have vendors that we use, both that deal with traditional media and those who monitor social media as well, and they use their algorithms and their systems to monitor. So those companies are Media Insight and SI.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, through you, in light of the negative PR that TST would have received, do you have a sort of dollar value as to what losses that may have created for the company during that time, and how have they, in a sense, trying to work towards building back the confidence in the general public and the nation by extension?
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will ask our CEO to talk about the revenue fallout.
Thank you, TSTT Chairman and Honorable Member. So TSTT did not specifically observe a decline in revenue due to this cyber threat. I had shared that there was a change in our operations due to us being impeded on collections for a specific period. The impact that we spoke about around reputation is one that has to be determined over time. There are things that we've agreed are the principles of reshaping that conversation with customers around the transparency in communication, something that we agreed needed to be done differently. The timeliness of that communication, collaborating with the right experts as Kamal George has shared a moment ago. Ensuring that the cybercrime culture is a conversation that we start with customers as well as this impacts the customers. Our approach is a multifaceted approach to ensuring that we rebuild this over time, and it is a program that we've already started. Some of it forms part of the inculcation into the operations, and others are programs to ensure customers that we have done the right things and taken the steps to remediate and to solidify our space in that regard. So to answer your question around the cost, it is not one that we can report on at this moment.
And what would have cost and Chair, through you, just last, what would have cost the organization then in terms of revisiting their structure? Because that would have come at a cost, right? So you may not have fallout from your customer end, but your structural end in terms of your IT and how. Do you have an idea what that cost would have been to improve and go forward? And I can't say stop. You can't. You just mitigate it to a certain extent. Do you have what that cost would have been?
Sure. So we have to look at it from the perspective of capital expenditure as well as operational expenditure against this. We've been on a 3-year cybersecurity roadmap, and that is one of those documents that is within this package. We can discuss the values of some of those, and that is definitely one that I would like to discuss in camera, if that is okay.
So this last, would this data have changed your trajectory, your 3-year trajectory?
Oh yes. It is, Honourable Member, it is something that we have to, it's an iterative process, but as an incursion happens, things change drastically in the way that we approach, and we've done that as well. Sorry, and my mic was on, sorry about that.
Thank you. Member Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions to put to TSTT officials. A malware incursion takes place, according to your admission and confession, based on what was submitted, between the 3rd to the 9th. And then between the 9th, a statement would have been issued by TSTT indicating to the population, Mr. Chairman, that there was a technical issue involved. And with this technical issue that came about, there were certain disruptions, including my inability to pay online, my inability to access communication via Digicel, as an example. And there were other challenges. However, Mr. Chairman, the population was only alerted to a ransomware attack on or about the 3rd of November of 2023, which was almost about, I would say about 3.5 weeks later. By that time, I am still sending all my data through TSTT, become a TSTT man. I never went to Digicel. I'm a TSTT person. So all my emails, all my communication continues to flow. But you know who have my data? Ransom X. Because they had already infiltrated, and they told Trinidad and Tobago on the 28th of October, we have attacked. Go on the dark web, you'll get millions of, or hundreds of thousands. All these things are taking place. I am not aware. These hundreds of thousands of TSTT customers are not aware. And they continue, Mr. Chairman, conducting their affairs. Be you commercial, be you residential, be you ordinary citizen. Can you explain to this committee why it took TSTT almost a month to explain to Trinidad and Tobago and its customers like me, my data have been breached. My data is now on the dark web. But during that time, I was communicating with TSTT. But I didn't know when I was communicating with TSTT, I was communicating my private and confidential data to a bunch of criminals and terrorists, as you described them. Could you explain, I said this a long introduction, explain to this committee why TSTT took almost a month to explain to the customers that there was a ransomware attack and your data was now in the hands of criminals and terrorists. I would like clarification on that.
Thank you, Honorable Member. And before I pass this on to the CEO and the communications team, I just want to put on record again, I agree with your pain. As chair of TSTT, when in hindsight, when I look at what has happened, it is hurting to me as well, right? And that is why I apologized earlier, right? And I acknowledge that things should have been done differently in TSTT with regards to the communication to our stakeholders and to the public at large. All right? See you.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
My chairman, talking through you to this chairman, Mr. Roach, the last person who apologized to Trinidad and Tobago on this breach is now history. I hope you don't follow in her path, because she apologized. She said sorry. And next thing I knew, Mr. Chairman, she was given her walking papers. So I just hope, Mr. Roach, you are not in line after Mrs. Lisa Agard. I think you were turning over to Mr. Weston. Mr. Weston, can we hear your take on this?
Line Minister also apologized.
Yeah, come in there.
Honorable Member, I would allow Mr. Georges to respond to the communication timelines, and it would be irresponsible of me to pass that over without saying, just as the chairman mentioned, we are not here to say that the timeline is acceptable. We're here to say that the timeline is not in keeping with what our standard going forward will be. I will allow Mr. Georges to respond to the technical elements within. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO, and thank you very much, member. You are right, and my CEO, Mr. Weston, has emphasized that the timeliness of communication to customers and to stakeholders could have been better. When, in communicating on this matter, when the incident occurred, there was an immediate issue, which was that systems were down. And that impacted customers, it impacted the ability to make calls and to make payments. And therefore, at that time, there was a responsibility to let customers know that they would experience challenges with interacting with TSTT and its multiple platforms. And so on the 9th and the 10th of October, there was communication that let them know a couple of things. That there was an issue, they would experience some issues, that disconnections as a result of the inability to pay would be suspended. Thereafter, the next statement was issued on or about the 30th of October, while the team, and in the period right after that, the technology team focused on restoring some of those services to ensure that customers were not impacted any further. The next statement thereafter was on or about the 30th of October, and I will echo the sentiments of Chair and the CEO that that time was not acceptable in terms of communicating to customers.
So, thank you. But you're talking about timeliness. Last Friday, on the 19th of January, Public Utilities Minister, Honorable Marvin Gonzalez, apologized to Parliament for an error in a statement on TSTT cyber breach, which he made in the House of Representatives on the 1st of November last year.
Yeah.
Errors based on information provided to him by the company's executive. Prior to that, the company's former CEO apologized to customers whose data was stolen, admitting that the company could have done better in communicating the cyber breach to its shareholders. Her words, that there were some things the company could have done better. Can you elaborate on these for us, please?
Sure. Mr. Georges, would you like to respond?
Sure. Chair, in terms of the question, you're speaking about the communication to the Minister of Public Utilities on this matter?
Well, my first question is, who misled the minister? I'd like to get to the bottom of that. And then the second question would be, what, in your opinion, could have been done better?
Chair, with your permission, let me start to answer that first question in terms of how information is transmitted between TSTT and the minister or his ministry. In terms of the usual process in respect to providing information to the Honorable Minister and or his ministry, questions coming in from the line minister and or his ministry is channeled through the chairman and or directly to the office of the CEO. Information received from the office of the CEO is communicated by the chairman, myself, directly to the minister, or from the office of the CEO directly to his ministry. At all times, information received by management would have been assumed to be the current position of the organization. And now I'll pass it on to our CEO to confirm that process.
Yeah. Thank you, TSTT Chair. So just confirming that the process would be operational data with regard to timelines would be communicated by the CEO's office to the board through the chairman's office, and then passed on to the line ministry or authority. Yeah, and sure. And what I would say is that the brand reputation department, the department that Mr. Georges sits in, would be responsible for dissemination of information to the publics. While he is he's the channel for communication outbound, his communication is validated or confirmed by the CEO's office prior to communication to the publics. I would also allow Honorable Member Mr. Kamal Georges to add to that if he would like, but I do appreciate that you may have a question within. Sure, thank you.
Honorable Chair, there was a second part to your question about what could have been done differently, and I am assuming that this is from a public standpoint, that you're speaking in terms of communicating. Yeah, sure.
Mr. Georges, I think what we are trying to clarify with the team here is that you have a Minister of Public Utilities having had to apologize to the Parliament for misleading it. And what the Minister said, and if you don't have a copy of his transcript, I have a copy, and I can copy it to you and your team through the chair, where the Minister is on public record as saying that TSTT, Executive Management / Board, misled him. That is what he was telling the Parliament, and he could not take responsibility for what he said in the Parliament on November the 1st. So what the chairman is asking, and I'm reiterating, could you explain to this committee who in TST Executive Management / Board of Directors misled, misrepresented information on the breach that took place on the 9th of October to the Honorable Minister, who had to publicly apologize in the Parliament. Otherwise, he was going to be sent to something called the Committee of Privileges. It's a serious offense. So all we are trying to get is if you could clarify for this committee, who in your view, Mr. Chairman, is responsible for that. That's all.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will allow our acting CEO to talk about or to answer that question.
Sure. Honorable Member, the Office of the CEO is responsible for all brand reputation statements. So the CEO's office is the one that issues any statement or authorizes any statements to the public or to the board, especially in cases of sensitive nature.
So
I hope I answered your question.
Are you telling this committee that as far as you are aware, Mr. Weston, Ken Weston, that in this instance of that particular communication that was read into the parliamentary record by the Honorable Minister, as far as you are aware, that would have come from the office of the Chief Executive Officer, who is no longer employed in TSTT? Is that what you are telling this committee? Because we want to be frank. We don't want to be making mistakes when we are submitting our report. So we don't want to be engaged in ambiguities. Could you be very clear and categorical and state the facts so we would be properly guided by your good self?
Yes, Honorable Member. I would state, in my view, that the office that would issue that instruction or that notification would be the office of the CEO.
I would like to ask Mrs. Tanya Muller, right? A very direct question. And tell me if I'm wrong, and you can guide me. Did you indicate to us earlier that someone would have either accessed the password for your network that allow these criminals or terrorists to eventually access it? They had access to a very critical password that normally nobody have access to, and they got access to it. Am I right or wrong?
They would have gotten access to an administrator's password. So we have several administrators within TSTT, like in any IT environment. And those passwords, because they are administrators, give a certain level of access. They create users, etc. And yes, they would have gotten one of those.
Okay. Could you tell this committee from your, well, I would imagine that an investigation would have been conducted by TSTT on this matter. Could you tell this committee, based on your investigation, has the company identified among all your network administrators which administrator or which set or number of administrators might have been involved in this particular unfortunate development?
Yes, we have.
Could you tell us what the name of that report that was conducted?
The checkpoint root cause and forensic analysis report.
Well, I looked through my documentation that you have sent us. And when I say you, not you directly, but TSTT. And Mr. Chairman, nowhere in this report, and I want to make it very clear to TSTT, this is a constitutional committee appointed by the people of this country. So how come, Mr. Chairman, through my chairman here, how come when I look through this thick document, I haven't seen that checkpoint report? Is this a secret? But you just told us that Cyber I, because you didn't have information, that is the acting CEO, to provide to us on what is the cost of checkpoint. How come we didn't get a copy of that report? Can I ask the chairman whether you'll have any objection to providing the chairman of our committee with a report, the following reports? One, the report issued by Checkpoint on this cyberware attack on the 3rd or the 9th, whichever date you want wish to choose. Secondly, there's something called Cyber I. Can we get the terms of reference of both companies that were engaged, both Cyber Checkpoint and Cyber I? And can we get the report submitted by Cyber I? And thirdly, since TSTT has conducted, or should I rephrase this, Mr. Chairman? Did TSTT conduct outside of Cyberpoint and Cyber I its own internal inquiry or investigation into which administrator account might have been hacked or been used to allow ransomware EXX to access the network that corrupted the system? I'd like to know if you have such a report, or whether such a report was ever conducted by TSTT and its internal organization, outside of CyberCheck, or CyberPoint rather, and Cyber I. Can I ask this to the chairman?
Thank you, honorable member. Just to go over the reports that are required by this committee, and just to confirm that yes, we can submit those reports. In terms of your last question, I will ask the CEO or a member of his team to answer that question.
Sure. Thank you, TSTT Chair, and thank you, Honourable Member. And just to paraphrase your question, you were asking if TSTT has conducted its own review to determine the individual
or individuals.
The individuals. Yes. So our IT security team would have worked alongside our partner to get to that determination of the admin account that would have been referenced by Mrs. Muller a short while ago. What I would say is that we would like to provide these details again in writing to the chairman, appreciating as well that there is an independent assessment being conducted presently through the board and the chairman's office that would prevent us from sharing any of those details during this engagement today.
And Mr. Chairman, the only reason I'm raising this, Mr. Chairman, our chairman, today's TST chairman, Mr. Roach, we have to be very frank on these matters. Unless a proper investigation is conducted, we do not know if within the bosom of TSTT, a combination of factors could be at work. One, incompetence. Two, internal sabotage and or subversion. We were told, based on the exercise we conducted internally, that a disgruntled employee who is on the compound of TSTT could be selling out TSTT to terrorists, to criminals, and all of us are paying the price for it. So that is another issue that you may have to consider. Incompetence, you have subversion, sabotage within the TSTT operations. These are questions and issues that you need to deal with. But Mr. Chairman, my final question on this round, I have a series for TSTT, but my final question is this. In March of 2022, I think it's the 13th, is the Ides of March. Caesar, Julius Caesar, Ides of March. On the 13th of March, I understand, malware incursion takes place at our TSTT. I say our because I never buy a Digicel. I am a TSTT man. So I love TSTT. And it hurts me to see what's going on there. So that is why I'm asking this question, Mr. Chairman. How come on March 13th or thereabouts, we had a malware incursion at TSTT? That is, and that is 1 year and about 6 or 7 months before criminals and terrorists out of Russia or wherever they are located infiltrated our systems. Our system. I would like to know first of all, did you conduct a report or an investigation into that malware incursion? If you did conduct a report, can we have a copy of that report, Mr. Chairman? Through you, we should get a copy of that report in 2022 when this malware incursion took place. And my key question is, how come we did not put systems in place? Or I'm assuming, I might be a bit presumptuous here. You may have done it, you'll explain that. But what systems were put in place after this malware incursion in March of 2022 to avoid Mr. Roach and Mr. Weston, through our chairman, this massive assault on our privacy rights. And tell me if I'm wrong in this as I close. My ID card is out there, I understand. My birth certificate is out there. My credit card is out there. My driver's permit is out there. All my private correspondences, because TSTT is an internet service provider. And if these fellas and so on attack sensitive areas of TSTT, did they attack our ISP servers? And therefore, if they did attack our ISP servers, all my private and confidential personal data is in the hands of criminals, and I could be the subject of identity theft. This is a serious matter, Mr. Chairman. And I am asking, through our chairman, to the honorable gentlemen and ladies here, what steps, what measures were taken after March of 2022 to avoid this debacle, debacle, call it what you will, that occurred on the 9th of October 2023. And I have read in the Guardian, nobody from TSTT has confirmed, and maybe you can guide us on it. The Guardian has reported that there are over or just under 1 million clients, client files and records under the control of terrorists and criminals, not only in Russia, but anybody can now go on the dark web and access citizens' private, personal, sensitive, confidential information and data and make mass with those pieces of data. Could you clarify for this committee whether the Guardian misled Trinidad and Tobago or that is not true? Because I want to get the reassurance that my credit card and my personal data is not in the hands of terrorists and criminals, whether they're in Trinidad and Tobago, who access the dark web, or they are in Russia or some other country. Could you tell this committee, give us the assurance, all is well with the citizens' data that we have been told by the Guardian are in the hands of criminals? Mr. Roach, Mr. Weston. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Just to answer the first question before I pass it on, with regards to the report from the investigation into the malware incursion that occurred in March 2022, yes, through you, Chair, we will submit that in writing. All right, now I'll pass it on to the CEO that will talk to your answers.
Thank you, Honorable Member. To give some details on maybe some assurances with regard to that information, I would call on Tanya Muller again to take us through the size of the data and the compilation of that and the content within. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. So, Honorable Member, yes, that data was exfiltrated and did go on the dark web, just so that we understand the scope. So, a lot of the data that would have been taken out of our systems would have been name, address, contact information, etc., which we would have put in the newspaper. There were 531 files, in particular, that stored what we saw as birth certificates, etc. That's not data that TSTT normally stores on a customer. I'm sure we've not asked you for your birth certificate, right? It was unfortunate that what happened in those scenarios, just 531 of them, in all of TSTT's existence, that our customer service reps would have scanned in that information on these customers in an effort really to provide more information around payment. So, for example, if you came in, what we had noticed is that they had taken a couple pictures of people's information, like from their phone, and they scanned it in, assuring the company that this customer had paid. We have blocked that link. No longer can anybody scan in any birth certificate, I saw a death certificate, things like that. That's no longer a possibility on our systems, and that is not a process that we have for our dealers or our internal staff. Unfortunately, because that link was available, people used it in those instances. But that has been stopped, and no more can that happen with
What
your
about credit cards, ma'am?
We did see a couple credit card numbers.
No. When I say a couple, what I'm saying is that the Guardian reported 1 million client files. So that was exaggerated.
Correct.
Okay. What about credit cards? Because, like, for instance, people who have to make their payments,
right.
Like when I go and make payments, right?
Right.
I will give them my credit card. Right. So they will just, so I want to know if my credit card, let's say mine, I mean me personally,
yes.
But citizens' credit cards would have been accessed as a result of the security breach.
We do not store credit card information on any of our systems. That is not a practice. You can pay via credit card, but it goes straight to the clearinghouse. It's not stored on any of our billing platforms or any of the platforms that we use, like Be Online, for example. It's not stored. So we do not have any credit card information. The few credit card numbers that we did see came as a result of those CSRs taking a picture of that information and scanning that in as proof of payment, really. Unfortunately, they would have captured a couple credit card numbers and a couple account numbers too, but it's minimal. And we would have gone through the full files, all of those files, to make sure. And like I said, we've disconnected the use of that option where they can scan that in, because that is not a process. They are not supposed to do that. And we do not store credit card information.
So thank you very much. I know member Lizama Leasing has been waiting very patiently, but just before going to her, just to summarize, obviously this committee is determined to understand and to get to who misled the minister and at large the country. We want to find out that. If it has been suggested that that came from the former CEO's desk, then I must tell you, out of fairness, we will have to call in the former CEO and interrogate as well. But we want to get to the bottom of that. We also need to know who in TSTT knew that the breach was occurring between the period 3 and 9 October 2023, who was told subsequently. And why was the public only told, as Member Mark says, on the 30th of November? So these are the things that are really engaging us. We'd like answers to. October. Okay. And before I hand over to Member Lizama Leasing, coming back to you, Mr. Georges, what could the company have done differently or better?
Thank you very much, Chair. The company could have communicated with its customers more clearly and in a more timely manner. What really should have happened was, at the onset or at the point that we knew that data was exfiltrated from the company, we informed our customers and we let them know that this has happened. This is something that happens globally. Many millions of cyber attacks today. We are not unique in that sense. So we had a responsibility at that time to say, this is what we know so far, and this is what we are doing about the situation. And also, this is what we are doing to secure and protect you in this particular instance. That is best practice when it comes to dealing with crises and in dealing with cyber attacks of this nature. And that's what we really should have done and we did not do. And we are committed to, as a company, learning the lessons from that particular instance, relooking some of our processes and strategies to ensure that, God forbid it happens again, that we do better by our stakeholders and by our customers.
Thank you. Member Lizamali Singh.
Thank you, Chairman, members. Thank you very kindly. First of all, I want to thank TSTT for the provision of such comprehensive documents. It made for very fine reading, and thank you for the information that you've provided, but it has also left a number of questions in my mind, which I would like answered today, please, through you, Chairman. We've spoken about the timeline for communication, but I would like to ask if you can give me a timeline of actually what happened. In your report, you spoke to suspicious activities happening on the 3rd of October, detection of those activities on the 9th of October. So can you let us know a timeline of exactly what happened and anything that happened beyond the 9th of October, leading us up to perhaps even this point?
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I'll ask Ms. Tanya Miller to give us that answer.
Honorable Member, so between the 3rd and the 9th, what we noticed is that the threat actor would have gone into our systems and started creating users. That's the trigger that we saw starting on the 3rd. We were not alerted to it until the 9th when our systems started shutting down. We immediately got on to doing our incident response, which would have been quarantining those environments, and started investigating what was happening. We would have seen the ransom note on the same day of the 9th. We did not attempt to open it or get into the details of it because we did not want that we made the matter worse for us. So we would have passed that note on to Checkpoint for them to do their forensics on it. We would have immediately started, like I said, isolating our environments, deleting everything and starting to rebuild. In a ransomware attack like this, if you don't have backups, then you have no choice but to pay the ransom. In our case, we had our backup systems and we were able to rebuild what we needed to rebuild from scratch because that's the cleanest method, and then restore from our backups where necessary to be able to bring back service to our customers. So that's really what the steps we would have, general steps that we would have taken.
Can I ask you, thank you very much for that. Can I ask you how long your restoration process would have taken and the rebuilding process?
The critical systems we would have gotten back online within a week and a half in terms of getting critical customer services back. So our dealers back up and running to be able to deal with customer queries, bill payments, etc. The Be Online platform took a little longer than that because we had to synchronize all of our payments, etc. But front office was back up within a week and a half.
Thank you. And in the background, was there any further threat actions happening to you?
No, we did not pick up on any. What we did this time, which was different to last time, is we built a quarantine environment, and every solution that we brought back into production had to sit in this quarantine environment for 24 hours to ensure that no further action was being taken by the threat actor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
I'm going to refer to a couple of things that you've put forward in this policy document, in this document that you submitted, your 29-page document. It speaks to your data management policy, and it's on page 15 of your document. And it speaks to your data management plan. I was just a little taken aback by that to see that you've stated that you don't have a formal company-wide data management plan. Can I ask for some more information about that, please, on page 15 of your document?
So we do have a data governance policy, and coming out of that, the next step is putting the plan together and in place. We actually don't have that in place as yet, just like we've stated. It is something that we are working on.
It's something you're working on. Do you have an expected timeline for that?
Not at this time. I think it's in the overall roadmap.
Yes.
It would have been a date in there.
Okay. Do you, let me not ask you, and I don't want to ask your opinion. I just want fact. And let's roll down to page 18, please. And it talks about your vulnerability assessments, and I saw that you've submitted some reports as well showing us some vulnerability assessments. As someone who is not a techie, can you let me know if monthly assessments, having a monthly assessment is sufficient? Do you need to do it more frequently?
Generally, monthly assessments are sufficient. This is what would look for general vulnerabilities. So yes, generally monthly assessments are normally good.
And can I ask, in the wake of all of the incidents that have happened subsequent to October 3rd to 9th, that period, have you been in heightened alert, rather, to monitor your systems?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I have a question that Senator, my colleague here, wanted me to ask you, which speaks to the hardware for your vendors, your suppliers, because you have external vendors.
Yes.
And the question is, who pays for that hardware? What is the minimum requirement of the hardware, for the hardware and the software, and are they audited on a regular basis?
So yes, we purchase hardware from many vendors. We do RFPs for selecting hardware, and we would have specifications for that hardware. So for example, we won't buy hardware that doesn't have dual power supply.
Let me just clarify the question is these satellite branches that your dealers then.
Right.
So the hardware that they use, not the one that TSTT procures, I'm talking about they use. Do they procure their own hardware? Is there a minimum requirement for those satellite branches, the hardware they use? And are they audited on a regular basis to ensure that they have or maintain the minimum requirement in terms of hardware, software, and security protocols that they will need? Because this is exactly where the breach started or infection took place. That is the question. It's not really internal. I'm talking about your satellite branches.
I have another question but I want to, thank you very kindly. Were you going to answer this for Senator Sukai? Or you've answered sufficiently?
Mr. Weston?
No, it hasn't been answered yet. Tanya, would you like to go ahead and answer that? So just to paraphrase, Honorable Member, you're asking in our partner operations or satellite operations, that equipment, is it owned by TSTT? And if it is not owned by TSTT, is there a standard? And if there is a standard, is it monitored or audited? Yeah? Okay. Tanya?
Yes. So it is not currently owned by TSTT. The partner buys their own hardware. We don't have a particular standard. What we would have done is actually coming out of this, we would have beefed up the contracts with them with respect to security. We would have also pushed out our own antivirus onto those machines. So now TSTT monitors those machines from an antivirus perspective. The intention, we have a solution that we use, which is application delivery that we grant to these partners, which is a secure encrypted way to provide data or access to them, which is generally pretty secure. But in looking at it, we obviously can be more secure. One of the things we're looking at right now is actually going to thin clients, purchasing it, TSTT purchasing it, and giving it to our dealers.
Chair, and I ask Senator Lazama just for just to add to this conversation, because on page 22, line item 12, cybersecurity attack plan, right? So it's page actually 23, sorry, line item 12, cybersecurity attack plan. Now, given that you had a breach on March 13, 2022, right? And according to this, what level of attack assessed by TSTT risk management plan? What is this level? And you said that currently there is a risk assessment project being undertaken. However, you have an enterprise risk management quarterly report. Would that report have indicated anything or prompted anything that could have prevented this breach? or did TSTT drop the ball?
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I'll ask the CEO to lead with that question.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you for that, Honorable Member. Your question was referencing the enterprise risk assessment, asking specifically if the partner store access showed that vulnerability.
Your enterprise risk management quality report, there's key risk indicators which IT risks are included. This was an IT breach, correct?
Yes.
I would like to know whether that report encompassed the satellite operations, and if this was something that TSTT may have dropped the ball on, because this would have been highlighted in your risk management breach. Seeing that it is a password, is an admin password, these passwords usually are regularly changed over time. And according to Ms. Muller, this password was not changed for quite a while. And this led to the entire breach of and compromise your system. So obviously your risk management would have highlighted this, or it wasn't as thorough.
Yeah. Thank you, Honorable Member. I confirm that enterprise risk assessment does capture cybersecurity. This specific item would not have been identified within that risk assessment, but it is an ongoing risk assessment. It does not mean that it has not in the past, but at this point it was not.
Just to add, the admin password that they got access to, was that an internal admin or was it external? So it's an internal admin that they got access via a satellite operation.
Mr. Weston, should I take that?
Yeah, sure, Tanya, if you take that. And your question was linking the administrative password concern and the satellite office concern.
Yeah, because again, the password would have been key. Now, in your risk assessment, because you have IT being analyzed in your risk assessment, they will advise usually that these passwords be regularly changed, right? And that is something that is always in a risk management report, that these passwords have been changed. Seeing that this password wasn't changed for a long time, that is why I'm asking, did TSTT drop the ball?
I'm wondering whether we should interrogate this in camera. I suspect.
Yes.
Now, I know Member Leasing Lizama has a question for one of the officials. Before handing over there, let me just do a time check. We have a lot of questions, I suspect, on preventative measures to assure the population that this is not going to easily recur again. After that, I would like us to spend some time on the wake-up call aspects to get from you recommendations and suggestions to the wider public on what we can and should be doing, and maybe even some thoughts on policy. And then we will close off and go into camera for all of these other burning questions. So, Member?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, my question now is directed to the Ministry of Public Utilities, and I thank them very kindly for being present. I noticed that the Monitoring and Evaluation Unit is here. Can I ask what action has been taken within the Ministry, within its own systems, subsequent to the finding of this breach, this cybersecurity attack, and up to present?
Thank you for your question, Member. I will allow the Monitoring and Evaluation Coordinator to respond in terms of what is the Ministry's role with TSTT in terms of its work program and some of the things that TSTT reports on. But simply to say that the Ministry normally at the start of each fiscal would require that its agencies submit a work program. We're talking here today about cybersecurity. And we looked at TSTT's work program. Part of the whole issue is the integrity of data and making sure that data is secure. So we would have seen under the strategic priority for building a modern climate resilient infrastructure base, which is one of the strategic priorities we give to all our agencies, that they must submit work items on and report on. And TSTT has spoken to its data center expansion program. So just that aspect of the whole cybersecurity framework, we have TSTT submitting initiatives on and reporting on a quarterly basis. We ask for reports on a quarterly basis as to the progress that each of our agencies would have made in that regard. In terms of the particular matter that we are discussing today, I think that perhaps it is, the committee has heard the timeline and when the ministry and the minister would have become aware of the cybersecurity breach. On the 15th of November, there was a high-level meeting at the ministry discussing the matter, not only with TSTT, but with other stakeholders as well as pertinent to the cybersecurity sort of integrity that we are dealing with. And at that meeting, we discussed some of the critical activities that must take place. You would appreciate, however, that at this point, in order for TSTT to really concretize a way forward in terms of shoring up its systems, that there needs to be really, really in-depth investigation, both internally and externally. And so we discussed with TSTT how they would go about pursuing that investigation, and the board would keep the ministry updated as that investigation unfolds. At this time, that investigation is ongoing. All right? I don't know whether Mr. Augustine wants to add specifically on where we are at in terms of the reporting from TSTT on their data center expansion program. Mr. Augustine?
Okay, good morning, members. So, as it relates to the data center expansion program, TSTT submits, as the permanent secretary has indicated, quarterly reports on such. Under that program, we receive statuses on 5 deliverables under those. Under that program, that would contribute as to TSTT's greater data security activities and initiatives.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Leons?
Thank you very much, Chair. So a lot was said today in terms of some of the vulnerabilities that we experience, and you all would have presented the roadmap for where we are, we want to be. My question is, where are we with respect to the recommendations that we put forward in terms of, well, I saw there were recommendations for third-party persons making sure they have their antivirus, etc. Where are we overall in terms of where we want to be confident that we manage the situation much better? I know cybersecurity is not a static solution. You know, it is dynamic, and the policies and programs. I heard you mention to Member Leasing that some of the data policies still have to be put in place. Where are we in terms of implementation of recommendations based on what transpired?
Thank you, Honorable Member. Can't you like to take that?
Thank you, Honorable Member. What I would say, as I introduce again Tanya Muller to respond on some of the technical components, what I would say is that we have had, or we are called on in this exercise to advance a change in security posture, cybersecurity posture, appreciating that it's a dynamic space, it's changing every day, but we must also accelerate our efforts. Tanya will take us through some of the rigor that has been put in place since the incursion at a very simple level, active management of endpoints, of the environments, with one of the partners who we mentioned earlier, to ensure that we have an extension of our IT organization looking at the environment to respond speedily, to allow us to make decisions, identify and isolate challenges on the security front. And also, there may be 12 points that I'll ask Tanya to take you through that talk to the multi-factor authentication, other elements that have been advanced and since already within implementation. Of course, the cybersecurity plan, that 3-year plan, had to be reviewed because if not, we will be chasing the past incursion. So I'll ask Tanya Muller to just take us through some of those steps that have been taken already and some of the change going forward. Okay? I hope that's okay with you, Honorable Member. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. So some of the things that we did immediately would have been things like building that quarantine environment that I would have spoken about already, to ensure that whatever we put back into production would have gone through that 24-hour process and be clean and sure. You know, nothing, like I said, would completely protect any company, but these are some of the steps that we would have put in place. What we did notice globally is that one of the platforms that we use for application delivery would have been heavily attacked across the globe, and we would have been on top of those patches, etc., to make sure that we are as secure as possible. Unfortunately, one of the patches that they submitted was the day after we got attacked. So we were a little bit, you know, not in the best place. But I mean, we have to wait on them to give us these patches. We would have then done our own shoring up of that particular environment. We would have put it in its own firewall. We would have also done something called microsegmentation, which means that it's in its own particular cloud environment and not in the same space as the other solutions. We would have gone straight down to things like administrator information and not having it set up the way it would have been previously. We would have removed a lot of access to harden up our environment from an access perspective. So those are some of the things, and I would have mentioned some before with respect to the antivirus. We would have made sure we were all on the latest patches, things like that, to ensure that we have done as much as we can from an immediate perspective. There are certain things that are not immediate that we need to do, that we are working on. Like Mr. Weston would have said, we have things like multi-factor authentication that we've already implemented but not deployed across the environment as yet. That is in train right now. And some of these things, you know, it sounds like something simple, but it takes quite some time for us to get everything in place. So we have started working on some of those, what we call short-term steps. We've reviewed that remote access for our dealers. We have done changes to the contracts. We are looking at doing the thin clients, like I would have mentioned. We would be pushing more security in that space. We've also started looking at expanding some of our solutions. Sorry.
Pardon me interrupting the response, honorable member and colleague Mrs. Muller. I would like you to provide a lot more detail to the honorable member, and I would ask if we could utilize the in-camera session to provide that detail, as I would like her to go into the more intricate elements of those deployments, some of which I would prefer not to be out in public consumption. If that's okay with you, honorable member, chairman, and sorry, Tanya, for the interruption. Pardon me.
Sure, no problem. Additionally, there are certain timelines you would have set in the plan. We would like to know what are some of the risks associated to you not being able to achieve these timelines, whether it be financial risks, human resource, skill sets risks that may affect your ability to implement certain things. Additionally, Chairman would have indicated maybe legislative assistance may help in implementing certain things. We didn't get the fullness of those things to ensure that we are better positioned, as Member Mark would have said, it's a TSTT man. And we want to ensure that TSTT, being something that we're proud of, is poised in a position to have that confidence. So where we in this committee can get those recommendations so that we can assist to ensure that this 3-year timeline that you put forward is achieved, is realized, and we don't encounter further risks because of something we overlooked. So in camera, we can go into some more details on this. Yeah?
So what we will do now is, I believe Member Indar Singh had a question, and then after that question, I would like to spend some time about cyber threats for the edification of the public on what can be done to mitigate, recommendations and so on, and then we will close off and go into the in-camera session. Member Indar Singh.
The whole question of, I'm trying to go to the report, yes. 4 on page 12, human resources and IT infrastructure. I know that it is stated very clearly in the report that TSTT currently does not operate a security operations center, but the establishment of a security operations center is a high priority item on TSTT's 3-year cybersecurity roadmap. Now, we have to agree that we are existing in the technological age, the IT age, and it is a bit mind-boggling for me that this particular issue was not treated with the highest sense of priority, given that cyber attacks and so on have not just occurred in October of 2023. It was in March of 2022, and it has been occurring in the worldwide environment. And I want to ask the question here, because when you go on to page 13, it says very clearly, it states, while reference is made to a voluntary separation employee program, it must be noted that TSTT has not offered a VSEP since 2013 or 14. But it is in the public domain that TSTT has dismissed approximately 2,000 workers between 2015 and 2024. Has the IT, or what we would call the department that has the responsibility for monitoring what occurred in 2022 and 2023? Was this department compromised in any way because of the sending home of workers by TSTT? And what is the current complement of this department?
Thank you, Honorable Member, for the two questions posed. I will ask the CEO to lead and then Jared Cooper to follow.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Your first question was around the Security Operations Center and your very relevant note with regard to the absence of a Security Operations Center. When I'm going to allow Mr. Smith to go into it, but when I referenced our position immediately after the incursion around having a third party provide support services for us, that was specifically around in part, the replication of a security operations center through a partner who would provide that endpoint security. I don't want to not pay it its the due, so I will allow Sando Smith to go into some details around that. Immediately after that, I would ask Jared Cooper, to my left, to go into a discussion around the response on the impact of organizational changes on the IT organization over the years that you have mentioned. Okay? Thank you, Honorable Member.
Honorable Member, the SOC operations within TSTT, we see an urgent need for that within the organization. And based on the advent of the incursion that occurred, we have hastened in terms of onboarding a SOC into the organization to treat with that.
You are telling me that, clarify hastening for me, please. In terms of a timeline. Could you?
In terms of our timeline, I would say by within the next
Honorable Member, pardon the side conversation. I was just confirming a detail. One of the partners who provides services to us is in negotiations this week for turning up a security operations center. Since the incursion, the partner who was providing the service to us provided managed security solutions through their monitoring, and that is what we've been using since then. Ideally, some operators choose to go to partners to provide these services or create an actual security operations center internally. I hope I answered your question, Member.
Chairman, I would only put on the record, and this is in no way any reflection of my sense of disappointment with anybody from a personal point of view. But I think given what was experienced by the country in terms of, my colleague has consistently referred to data of citizens being in the hands of criminals and terrorists and so on. What we are hearing from TSTT in terms of the establishment of this Security Operations Center, for me, I do not know if it will meet the views of other members of this committee is totally unacceptable from a timeline point of view and what is being done. And I would want whether it is the chairman or the CEO to give this, because we are not any clearer whether the restructuring or the dismissal of approximately 2,000 workers from TSTT, how it has impacted upon the department that is supposed to be monitoring TSTT's system as it relates to cyber attacks. Has TSTT's system been compromised as a result of the restructuring?
Honorable Member, I would ask for Jared Cooper to respond to that final question very clearly. And the question was, has the restructure of TSTT impacted its capability in the... Sorry? Oh, yeah. Has it impacted the capability of the IT security organization
to withstand cyber attacks?
Thank you.
And what is the complement, existing complement, as we speak?
Sure. Hi, thank you, Member. So as regards the existing complement, the structure within TSTT for cybersecurity, we do have a manager with 2 cybersecurity specialists. Now, to be clear, that is in the context of, we do have arrangements with third-party arrangements, as well, of course, there's IT security throughout the organization. But specific to cybersecurity, the existing structure is circa three individuals specific, but with a strong backing in terms of the actual coordination with third-party managers. We have the ongoing monitoring by Checkpoint, we do have CyberEye, and we do have the outcome of an existing investigation going on. But I just want to be clear as regards the impact in terms of restructuring over the past years, as regards the impact on the cybersecurity. When we would have done the most recent restructuring in July of 2022, this of course was in conjunction with an international, very regarded telecom-specific partner, Bain Company, in terms of better performing telecom operators and in terms of their complement. So the existing structure, of course, was in tandem and upon their advice. But of course, as we've stated throughout the morning, the whole concept of cybersecurity is a very dynamic and rapidly evolving phenomenon. And pretty much every 3 months, of course, Mrs. Mullen can confirm, the whole structure of patches and stuff in relation to cybersecurity is always ongoing. So I just want to quickly state and really close by stating really in terms of the rapidly evolving industry of cyber, we are continuously and diligently reviewing that structure and determining the way forward. So coming out of the structure, we would actually determine the way forward as regards that complement and what it is, how that structure should be changed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't think you've quite answered Member Indarsing's concern. What I'm hearing him suggesting for your consideration is whether this could have been due to employee disgruntlement arising out of the retrenchments and the restructuring exercise. But what I want to say is, it's clear that we have a lot more questions. I believe, even if it's just in terms of the preventative aspects and the technical aspects. So I am going to have another session, I think, which will be entirely in camera, where we will be able to take our time and go through thoroughly a lot of the questions that we've put today. I do want to end today's session on a happy note, or a more positive note, and we are aiming to end around 12:30. So I think, segueing off what you just said, that the cybersecurity concept is dynamic and rapidly evolving, knowing that ransomware is a growing threat, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the Caribbean, I would like us to spend some time on what should citizens know, what can organizations do in terms of preparing for ransomware and other cybercrime attacks, whether we should be looking at it as an acute national security threat, how to respond to a cybercrime or ransomware attack. And let me start by asking the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Digital Transformation, since you are the ones in the digital space, where are we in all of this? And does the Ministry of Transportation, of Digital Transformation, have a strategy or plan?
Good day, Chair, again. I just wish to bring to the fore that part of our gasted responsibilities alludes to cybersecurity as it relates to the digital agenda of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This, however, is a collaborative effort with the Ministry of National Security. There's an agency under there, TTC-CERT, that normally provides incident response across the public sector. We do as well, along with technical advisory to ministries, divisions, and agencies. And we do so accordingly, along with iGovTT. All right? To give you an idea as to where we are, we would have launched or gone into a sanctioned loan program with the IDB that seeks to expand our resilience across the public sector, look at some of the upgrades necessary in terms of national critical infrastructure, training, and even going so far as to have some sort of targeted executive sessions. We would have done so in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Administration. I'm aware there's also an upcoming session with the Ministry of National Security targeting parliamentarians and other senior executives of the public sector. I would also ask at this point in time for Mr. Leon Wessels, who is our Deputy National Chief Digital Officer, who we would have hired in terms of cybersecurity, to give some additional insight into some of the items that we have pursued with regards to cybersecurity.
Thank you, PS and Chair. So to give a little more perspective as some of the cybersecurity initiatives that the ministry is embarking on, so we are in the process of procuring reactive and proactive incident response services for the public sector. This would involve retainer services that the various agencies, organizations can utilize in the event of a similar ransomware scenario, whereby they're able to immediately respond to these particular incidents. That particular service would be available to all ministries, department agencies. We're also doing a proactive incident response services. That would be from a phase approach because it's going to be a little more expensive. That is going to be particularly for the 9 MDAs that will be on board for the interoperability and the national EID initiatives that has been rolled out. Following that, and these programs are going to happen in parallel. In respect to that, we'll also be conducting an enterprise risk assessment for all the 22 main ministries. And in that assessment, we will determine the current state, any sort of gaps that may exist within the ICT infrastructure within those ministries, recommendations in the form of a roadmap to be achieved from an implementation perspective within 3 to 5 years. So those are the immediate sort of pragmatic approach that the ministry will be taking. But in addition to that, there would be training facilities for those ICT administrators within the public sector. There will also be a governance, an incident response governance structure within the public sector on how we manage incident in this respect. Sensitization in terms of cultural awareness will also be embarked on. That will also be available for both the public and private sector in terms of how to operate in this ICT industry.
Thank you. Now, I'm hearing a lot about internet and ministries. Now, my understanding is that when ransomware started to really manifest itself some years ago, in the UK, in the US, in the EU, they treated it as a national security threat, and they came down with everything on it to squeeze it out. And that is why ransomware is now migrating to more vulnerable societies such as ours. But what is the state doing in terms of training or preparing the private sector as well, the business community, about whether we need to have a national framework, whether we need to have other laws, what sort of support services should we have in place? Because we're all living in the digital space. We don't want this universe to be the wild, wild west. So I would like to hear from you all what is being done, and then maybe some practical suggestions that you can offer.
So I'll be very specific with one particular item that the Ministry of Digital Transformation has progressed upon. And one would be the data center project that we have initiated. And that, of course, is the building out of a data center to house secure government data, and in so doing, give the assurance that the access to such data and where it lies is actually protected within our sovereignty as well. In addition, when you look at some of the legislation that currently exists, the Data Protection Act being one, both the public and private sector actually adhere to the general privacy principles enshrined within the DPA. All right. We have also embarked upon consultations to fill the Office of the Information Commissioner, who plays a critical role in terms of actioning some of the safeguards within the DPA. All right. So the ministry, and by extension the government, is actively pursuing methods to ensure the safeguard of information within the public sector. And to that effect, we have, via iGovTT, extended what we call the GovNet network, which is a secure, managed, wide area network for ministries, MDAs, to access and house their data in a secure server space, as well as to have secured internet facilities for free, I might add, on an ongoing basis. And that includes monitoring incident response of the particular networks and their computing environments.
So thank you. Now I'm going to throw this out as a general question, because TSTT, you are yourselves a victim of this crime. Do you have any recommendations that this committee should consider to take to Parliament in terms of whether we need to have special laws passed or things done? I'd be grateful for your thoughts and suggestions.
Chairman, thank you for considering us in that conversation. Definitely. So TSTT sees this, or the management of TSTT sees this as an opportunity at the same time to change the conversation on cybersecurity. The incursion was something that was discussed very publicly, and we have seen it impact or touch each of our customers, either in a social way or operationally. And we believe that changing the conversation around cybersecurity, bringing the customers into that transparent space where we are communicating with them, and when we speak about policies, reviewing our policies to ensure that these policies address very quickly the treatment of customer data, the timeliness of that communication, and having the customers gain an appreciation for the impact of it on them. There's an industry sharing opportunity here as well, and I believe that, if we speak about legislation, where Where are we with having all operators learn from challenges that each of us take on, also beyond the industry? There were other companies locally who were impacted by cybersecurity. Where is that opportunity? Definitely policy updates that really speak to the concerns that were raised as we see policies, while we are updating those policies that have been established 2 or 3 years ago are now less relevant, and they require refreshing, just as the threat actors out there do their refresh every day. As our partners in progress here in the room with us, Ministry of Digital Transformation, telecom operators must also have a requirement, and here is maybe an opportunity for further legislation around digital transformation by the individual operators, because the MDT would agree that as we progress along digital transformation and increase our digital index, there is a hardening of security as we move transactions of low value, high volume into more sure automated formats. This brings further assurance. And that is something that TSTT is looking at as well. How do we progress along that? I know that my responses weren't specifically about here is a framework that we require, but we're very open to those discussions, and I believe that a more global discussion needs to take place on how we are all impacted in the industry and as consumers as well. Thank you, Chair.
No, absolutely. And what I'm hearing is that we really need to have a national conversation on this, because it is many different parts that need to come together. Now, I think we need to educate the population and organizations about ransomware specifically. So, for example, I know that one of the things in England that they did was to say that it's actually against the law to pay a ransom. Make it uncomfortable so they know that you're not going to pay it at all, because it's easy to succumb to the threat and say, well, look, I need to release this encrypted data and pay it. But at that stage, your data is already out. It may have been sold again to the dark web. And there's no guarantee when you negotiate with criminals and terrorists that payment is going to yield the hoped for release. So things of that nature, I think maybe government in tandem with the industry could start putting out real practical suggestions for organizations. I saw some of these suggested steps should be considered. Disconnect the infected device from all network connections, whether wired, wireless, or mobile phone based. Use cyber incident reporting portals to report the attack as soon as possible. Implement effective due diligence to mitigate the risk of financial sanctions breach. Seeking independent legal advice. So I think it might be helpful if the ministry could also start putting together, strategies, preventative measures, knowing that even with the best measures in place, you could still succumb. I don't know if members have any questions or things you'd like to pick up.
Not really a question, but dovetailing on what you have said, I don't know. I know I stepped out of the room for a minute. I don't know if due consideration we continue to hear of the terminology of whole of government's approach. And I don't know if the Ministry of Public Utilities, in tandem with the Ministry of Digital Transformation and where we are with cyber security and cyber crimes and so on, is probably looking from a policy point of view at the establishment of a monitoring unit and so on within the respective ministries as we go forward in dealing with this issue.
Yeah. Well, we're drawing to an end, but I think on the next occasion, perhaps this will give us some time to formulate suggestions on things. So, for example, simple things like people need to know about the importance of having backups, backup computers, backup your phone, backup your devices. making sure that your software systems are regularly updated, having a plan to reduce the damage and the impact of ransomware to your operation. So, I mean, this is a serious threat to how we live and conduct business. And I think that we really want to use this, as I said, as a wake-up call and to inform this committee in making recommendations.
I'd like to ask whether, and this is for Mr. Ken Weston, Acting CEO. Can you tell this committee whether the instructions given by the Minister of Public Utilities, the TSTT, to conduct an internal investigation into this cyber security breach has commenced, and if it has commenced, where are you with this internal investigation as ordered by the Minister of Public Utilities, and how soon you will be able to make that available to the public? Because as the chairman said, the public has lost a lot of confidence in TSTT, and this brand that we have taken so many years to build could be in danger of being evaporated. So could you clarify for us, where is TSTT with this internal investigation as ordered by the Minister of Public Utilities?
Thank you, Honorable Member. Given the nature of that question, there are certain aspects that I would like to take in camera, but just to answer what you would have said, yes, that investigation has commenced. I can provide a written submission in terms of the mandate and give some details. And in terms of the duration of the time before we get the final report, 16 weeks.
Okay. And the final thing, Mr. Chairman, again, this is to the Chairman and Mr. CEO. The heartbeat of TSTT, is it the network teams and IT division of the TSTT? That is what keeps TSTT alive. And in this regard, I was just looking at what Mr. Kamal George is as the communications and reputation person in that organization. I was just concerned about lines of communication, lines of information sharing, and at the end of the day, who is really in TSTT? Feeding who? So that when they come out to the public, it is easy to say it's John Brown. It is easy to say, Mr. Chairman, it's Harry Jane. But somebody is providing John Brown and Harry Jane with the material, because they are not specialists in the area that's supposed to be the heartbeat of TSTT. So I'm saying this, Mr. Chairman, to bring to your attention that we can easily have scapegoating in this matter. And at the end of the day, I think your position is so explicitly and clearly relevant, because to balance the scales of justice, we must hear from everyone. We must hear from all sides of the story. And I'm so happy, Mr. Chairman, that you have said you're going to have a second engagement, and in this regard, we are going to have it internally before we deal with it externally, because we need to get to the bottom of this thing. So that is why I wanted to just make this final intervention with your leave.
Thank you, Member Mark. Before I invite closing comments, I have one more question from Ms. Lizama Leasing.
Thank you very kindly, Chairman. We've had a lot of discussion here this morning, and I thank you for the rich content and the information that we have to ponder upon. I look forward to our next meeting. I just wanted to know, because our next meeting will be in camera, if there are any assurances or statements that you would like to make just to the public, for the public's comfort in going forward, and where TSTT's position is right now.
Kent, take that one.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member, for that and giving us an opportunity. I know that the TSTT Chairman is going to provide some closing remarks. But as we build on this conversation on transparency, it is really critical that our accelerated efforts behind fortifying our cybersecurity environment is very visible to customers, and that we make the right decisions for our customers and clearly communicate to those customers the changes that we are making, and that they see evidently in the articulation of our operations those steps to protect them and protect the data that they share with us as an indigenous telecoms provider. We take great pride in that, and to Member Mark's, Honourable Member Mark's comments, we are TSTT. This is a brand that as Trinbagonians we're extremely proud of, and we can in no way allow customers to believe that we are not as strong as the rest and ready to serve our customers in the way that they should be served. I think it's important to let the public also know that TSTT has not at any point given in as it relates to cybersecurity, but we've done the opposite. We have turned up the heat on cybersecurity internally, put things in place to make the right decisions to protect our customers and provide a first-class international telecoms network for our customers. We have a lot of reliance through our business customers, our strategic customers, our government customers, who we know rely on us for these services, and in no way do we intend to let this down. The entire business is aware. We keep our internal staff and our other stakeholders involved in the conversation, such as the CWU, to ensure that we are going in the right direction with our conversation on cybersecurity awareness and taking this forward. We will always have to deal with cybersecurity, but what we will not be doing is having to make excuses for any shortfalls in delivery. Okay. So thank you very much, Member, for that.
May I take that as your closing comment?
I will allow.
Yes.
So may I invite closing comments from the other officials present?
So good afternoon, Chair, members, colleagues. Just want to say that, we're thankful for the invite. We look forward, if invited, to the next session. We'll be sure to come forward and give some additional insight, even support to our colleagues from TSTT and public utilities, as well as to further educate the public. And rest assured that our mission continues and our mandate continues at the Ministry of Digital Transformation to carry Trinidad and Tobago forward. Thank you.
Chairman, members, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here at this hearing. The Ministry of Public Utilities will look forward to the additional hearing, and we will be here to provide whatever support and information we can, not only to TSTT, but to our other colleagues, and of course to this committee. Thank you for your recommendations as well.
Good afternoon, committee chairman and committee members. Well, I echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Thank you for the invitation, and we look forward to the next meeting, and we'll provide whatever support is required, both to the committee and to TSTT. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our business for today, and this meeting is now suspended. In closing, we will write to inform you of the next hearing date, so we'll keep you posted. So in closing, may I thank you, TSTT, the media, ministries, and the viewing and listening audience. Good day.